This is SeerNova Podcast. I almost forgot the name of the podcast. Wow, we've been doing this a while. Actually, that's really funny. I just mentioned that. Todd was our first guest.
Holy crap, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Full circle. This is season 2, episode 21. We have Todd Rayner. What's up?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So before we start pressing record
in the green room, yeah, we do. I was telling Greg we got to start recording this like the green room section, and then just cut it off later, and then like share it as a separate thing because we always end up having something fun to talk about.
Yeah, we were talking about superheroes and superhero comics and genres in general.
Which, by the way, I found it. I was looking for it because I'm recently going through this book, and by recently I mean like forever, taking forever because it is a very long book. But
there's way too many words without pictures for my liking.
My god, this should have been turned into a comic book. They would have been done way better. But in here, there's actually a specific breakdown of 26 precise genres. There are subgenres, cross genres, blended genres, all that, but 26 distinct genres. And it was action, adventure, avant-garde, which just means new, biography, comedy, coming of age, crime, disaster, drama, epic, erotic, family life, fantasy, historical, horror, martial arts, which that one actually I didn't know was a separate one, mystery, religious, romance, science fiction, slice of life, sports, superhero, thriller, tragedy, war, and western. Yeah, and then but everything else is either a subgenre of those or a cross blend of those. But yeah, I just wanted to get to say all those because what we were talking about before was how a bunch of stories all seem like superhero stories. We were debating about whether or not Indiana Jones is a superhero story.
And Batman is a superhero or not? Or he's just
rich.
And I would contest that that would probably fall under crime until the day that a super villain entered or a superhero. I actually don't know which happened first. But once a actual super being of either hero or villain origins, I think that's what would then classify that as a superhero comic. But everything before that, I would consider a crime comic.
So if it's just him and Robin running around, they're not superheroes?
Stopping burglars, yeah, I would consider them.
Any of the Robins, like pick 7 of them. I don't know how many there's.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that then it would be considered like vigilante crime. That would be like the subgenre category as opposed to like superhero.
But is Joker even a supervillain? Because he just got messed up by like some acid. He doesn't have superpowers.
Well, even the acid story is only one of the 27 stories that he has. So like.
That's fair.
It's funny. I bet there is a genre per Joker story. I bet there's Western one, a war one, an erotic one. There you go.
The first villain ever in Detective Comics is, according to Google, Dr. Death. So,
yeah,
not a supervillain. I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I think
he didn't have superpowers.
Did he just have gas? Is that what he did?
But before Dr. Death, there weren't any like super villains before that.
It was just
he was the first super villain.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I don't know if he had like powers. I think
that's what I was saying. I thought he just made like
or something like he would commit crimes, and Batman had to go figure out who did it, type of thing. Like Dick Tracy,
like the Riddler.
Is Dick Tracy?
Yeah, like the Riddler is not.
Exactly. Like Dick, but Dick Tracy, isn't that just crime? Like that, he's just a detective, right? Like there's no super or anything in that.
Have you seen the movie? He does some crazy shit. So I mean,
so maybe it's crime martial arts.
There you go.
It's just Double Dragon.
Yeah.
What was was it the Green Hornet? Like that would be an example of like they put that as superhero, but there's no super in that, is there?
I don't know. Bruce Lee is a superhero.
No, but he's
a real superhero.
No, that's martial arts. That's what I'm saying. That's the category.
He genre mashes. He does it all, man.
Yeah, he's a super martial art hero.
Superhero martial artist, yeah.
Super califragilistic.
And then when Madonna shows up in Dick Tracy, then it becomes erotic, and you just have like you're mashing everything.
I'm sure they were mashing everything.
They were.
Speaking of superheroes, though, you have Icepick as your first comic that you
I did. I do. Yeah.
So you have Icepick and you got Annabelle, which is a little different, and then now you got Luke. So how'd you get from Icepick to Luke?
I just threw some words down. No. So Icepick was unabashedly the idea I had as a teenager, and growing up in like the image boom, you definitely just have all those influences. And so that was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna write this cool superhero comic, right? And that's what Icepick was. It was inspired by Batman, Spawn, all the Punisher anti-hero kind of stuff. And it was a revenge story. It was kind of a Left 4 Dead, trying to figure out who killed his parents story. And I introduced Annabelle into that story. She's his fiance, still fiance, yet to be married. And I just thought it was like this weird, fun story as a teenager. And it was, I kind of drew it when I was like 16, 17. Terrible artwork, terrible story. Colored it in with like, color pencil when you're in high school. And I really shelved that for probably a few decades until I just, computers came into the play. I kept drawing. Never really thought that I would go back to that story. I just kind of pushed myself in the 2000s more as like a digital artist, went to college in 2007 and learned, how to do digital coloring. And that's where I think things started to kind of take off. And I just felt confident, 2010s, felt confident in my artwork, revisited that story, put out all my old shitty artwork and was like, what can I do with this story? And so that kind of launched Icepick. Did that entire book by myself, did all the writing, drawing, publishing, all that good stuff. And then it's like, as you guys know, like, what's the next thing? You get a lot of people asking you, start hitting issue 2, 3, 4. They're like, what's next? Where's this character going? What's going on? So I felt like it'd be really fun because I knew that was a 90s story. It was just my kind of love letter to the 90s comics. Let's try something totally different. Let's do a little bit femme fatale, sexy heroine book. And so I took Annabelle and was like, let me write a story around her. And I do things a little differently, come to find out. I never thought I did, but I usually start with the villain because I already have my 3 main characters. And I do all 3 of these books are supernatural in kind of at the core. They all deal with supernatural characters. Icepick had angels and demons. Annabelle had dragons. Luke has fairies and vampires. So, and they're all kind of witches. So we all have this like kind of supernatural magical creature element to it. And because I like supernatural creatures, I kind of just started doing research on like, well, what are the things I like? I like dragons. Well, okay, cool. That would make a cool villain. Let me research dragons. So I spent like weeks researching like dragons and the history of dragons, the lore of dragons. Come to find out there was like the first dragon in ancient Sumeria. And I was like, that would make a really cool villain. Let's write a story around him. And so I ended up writing it villain first. And then I kind of make the heroes here, that kind of comes secondary. And I did the same thing with Luke. It was like, I wanted to do fairies and vampires because I like those characters, wanted to do them a little bit different. So I end up having the fairies are at the top of the food chain and the vampires are kind of the scum of all the magical creatures. And it takes place in Salem, Massachusetts. And it basically, each of these stories, each character story is a loose trilogy of one another. So they all 12 issues, when it's said and done, it will be one big volume. And it literally, at the end of an issue 4, the next issue picks up like the next day. And I love, I'm a fan of like small stories with small casts that take place over a day or two. And that's how I wrote these kind of 3 major stories. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's live on Kickstarter. We got issue 1, a lot of cool covers. It's old school black and white horror. I mean, doesn't get much better than that. So fans of that genre, as we're talking about, it is horror. It's supernatural. It's got sexy fairies. It's got gruesome vampires. It's got some gore. It's got some, love interests mixed in, a little bit of everything on that side. But it's a lot of fun.
That's cool. When you mentioned that you focus on the villain first and then try to make the hero, do you do that in a manner where, like, let's say, you know, like you get Superman, he's invincible. So you're like, okay, how do we make him weak? Let's make up a thing, the kryptonite. Every person has a kryptonite that weakens them. And now it's, you know, literally a metaphor. And in this idea, do you create a villain and then try to have a hero specifically able to beat the villain, or maybe even the opposite, where it's like this villain has a specific advantage over the hero? Like, how do you think about it when you create the hero after creating the villain?
Yeah, well, the three heroes were ideally created in Icepick, and I never fleshed out. Like, this is where I must say I do lack in the character building, because I know a lot of writers will spend a lot of time and they will have a ton of stuff written about an individual character, you know, strengths, weaknesses.
No idea what that's like.
Yes. I mean, and I just was like, I started with Icepick. I'm like, this dude's sweet. He can manipulate moisture, and I pitched it that way. And that was his superpower. It was very, very stereotypical. Like, it was a lab accident. The bad guys tried to kill him. They sprayed bullets everywhere, and all these chemicals got on him, and it made him what it is. And his buddy found him as this kind of pile of goo, and kind of kept, got them all together. And that's a story yet to be told, is like, how did that transformation happen? But typically, is writing kind of the villain, finding a villain first, it just allows me to focus more maybe on the villain side of things. And I don't really write are there weaknesses for the heroes? Like, that's something that typically just happens organically if I'm writing. Like, I will find like for Annabelle, for instance, as I'm fleshing out this idea, I will write out what do I want these 4 issues to tell? What is my story? And I try to keep it within a short paragraph, but not quite an elevator pitch, but something to say okay, she gets kidnapped by this ancient Sumerian dragon. Okay, what happens? And then I start fleshing out each individual issue. And for her, it was okay, what's the catalyst to start the issue? And her sister gets kidnapped. So for Annabelle, in that story, it's her sister is the weakness. And that's where the whole story starts. For Icepick, there really wasn't a weakness. It was just kind of he was fighting the bad guy in the book, and that's kind of what 90s comics did. They didn't really flesh a whole lot out with characters. Some of the books did, but and then for Luke, that's yet to be discovered as far as does he have a weakness? What is his weakness? He's traveling to Salem to figure out what's going on, and he kind of stumbles into this ancient war between the fairies and vampires. And I feel I try to tell an interesting side of the lore of these characters. So it's not the same old thing. It's not something you're probably gonna read about anywhere else. It's just very different.
That is interesting. I think that's something that first off, it is cool to kind of just have that 90s nostalgic on it, where it's just he's just here to kick, what is it, chew bubblegum and kick ass, and he's all out of bubblegum, right? So I know I definitely like that. But it is interesting though, focusing on the villain first like that, because it does seem like a cool way to really make sure that the thing that he's about to surmount is very great. And because there's so much detail, it makes it so much scarier. It makes it so much, is he going to be able to do it? And it's even if he doesn't have a weakness, it's more we've seen him do cool stuff, but that, can he do that? So it's still a cool idea. That's why it's I'm wondering how you thought about it, but that would make sense. Just making this, very well developed villain, so that that's the thing you can just focus on him trying to fight this thing, because everything's about that thing anyways, because that's what he has to fight. So why not develop that the most?
And that's kind of how it just came organically. It was just with Annabelle, because that was really my dipping my toes into not only a different genre, but also just a different way of storytelling. I had a lot of fans that like Icepick, and I'm definitely coming back to that. And 2026, even though that seems like it's far away, but there's definitely some things that I'm lining up at the end of this year to, in a way, relaunch Icepick and, have all these stories included in it and continue the storytelling of Icepick and these 3 main characters. But for Annabelle, it was okay, how do you write a sexy strong female character. You know, I'm a fan of Vampirilla and Lady Death and Fathom and all these other characters. You know, and for me, it was like, you're right. I started with that like unsurmountable villain as a dragon. And Luke, it's like these vampires are very vicious. Like, they don't even care. And the fairies are even worse. Like, you know, the one fairy is ripping out a vampire's throat. Like, that's the level of viciousness from the fairies. So right out of the gate, you kind of get like an innocence from the fairy when I first introduce her. But then you throughout the issue 1, you really see like, oh shit, like they're vicious and they will do what they need to do. And you see the kind of like scuzzy scumbagness of the vampires. So in issue 1, Luke doesn't even know he's got to fight them. Like, he has no idea. So he's just there trying to figure out like what's going on with his family. And he found out he's part of his parents were a witch covenant and stuff. But, you know, it's this whole like darker side kind of storytelling. And it's really fun to write horror. It's a different kind of genre to write.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love the idea of taking fairies and making them like the cute but evil. It makes me think of even Lord of the Rings. Like, their elves are like this very prestigious thing, but when tortured, they're the orcs. Like, they are that, like, they can be super evil, and some, you know. So it is this cool idea of like sometimes what is it? Damn, I can't. It's like there was a speak softly, carry a big stick kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, they seem to be these super innocent things, but like they'll tear you apart, like little gremlins. I was gonna say, even like the gremlins, it's that idea that like the innocent thing could be that very powerful being. So be careful.
Gizmo's great, but you don't want to you don't want to mess with him.
Yeah. Or was it Toothless? I was just thinking, even like the How to Train Your Dragon, like the dragon he finds is toothless. Like, the whole point is he hides his teeth. He looks innocent, but he's actually, he's a dragon. So it's like it's cool to have that that idea, because it works like both ways. Then you can get like the Shrek-like characters where they seem like they're an ogre, so they seem like scary and all that, but actually they're soft. So it is kind of like it's very cool when you get that dynamic in storytelling.
Yeah. It's fun.
Do you ever have any plans of going into another media besides comics, like a video game or anything like that?
Animation.
Yeah, I would love to. I kind of like the way Icepick was designed, and just with my background as a designer and all these different things, it's like, going to art school, design was always like front of mind. So when I work on characters, it's like, for him at least, it was like, what's a striking design? And I think he would look really cool as an anime, just like the superpower he has, what he can do. It would be really cool as an anime.
Like 90s X-Men style.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I just think that would look really slick. And I would love, if I were to do video game stuff, I mean, it'd be fun. I think nowadays it's probably a hell of a lot easier to do your own video game and do stuff. I never really dipped my toes into what it takes to do that. But I absolutely would do like an old school, like brawler kind of X-Men or Double Dragon,
like the 2D back and forth.
Oh, absolutely. Like old school Mega Man. I mean, like, that's what I grew up on. So that would be really cool. And you could pick like one of the 3 characters and
I think if I remember hearing correctly, there's a lot of like open source code that's like has that stuff pre-built, and then you just program a couple little things and you basically have it. You just slap on some skins. So I think that's the other cool thing. We briefly discussed like AI before we started as well. And I think that a lot of people that are afraid it's going to take over art don't see it for all the other stuff that it could do. Like, you could get it where like you drew all the art and then you put it into a program and say, turn that into a video game. And it's like,
well, if it can do that, that's one thing. I don't know we're there yet.
We're really close. I don't know if you've seen the VO3 from Google, but basically it can make full length video ads that have audio. Like, they can make people talking from scratch, all of that. So if we're at that level from pure generation, I've already seen like animated animator AIs, meaning like you add an image, and this actually existed before ChatGPT stuff. So like they used to have these. I probably used the earliest I probably used it was maybe 2017, 2018. You could take a drawing you did, it didn't matter, like a stick figure drawing, slap it into this machine, and then very quickly it would pinpoint what looked like arms, the head, and that stuff, and you could get it to walk. right? So that's existed for a long time. I can't imagine with AI now that doesn't exist to the capacity in which we could create games. It's probably just whether or not it's been optimized for that, for like the layman, like whether or not somebody random could just put in a photo and be like, make me video game, as opposed to having to like learn a little bit of understanding. Because I think that's like the significant difference between where AI is now and where it could be, as well as like what it really can do now versus what people think it can do now. Because some of those, I watched a video that an associate of mine sent me, and like it looks real. Like if the only thing that I noticed was that ironically the captions were messed up, but the mouth, the words perfectly aligned, generated from scratch. I was like, holy crap. Like that's, so if they can do that with real people, I can't imagine 2D drawings are that far behind. So the ability to take what you have and like, because this is something, it's so funny. Greg and I talked about this like 2018. I would love it to have our digital comics where each panel was like a micro GIF. You know what I mean? Like it would just move a little bit. So like if you're punching, it would be like showing this, and like the next scene, like the explosion, that kind of stuff. But like just that little micro scene. So it's still a comic because you're not trying to like play a whole reel. You want to capture individual moments, but then you could give it that effect. And it started off by us talking about adding audio first. And then I actually got this comic when we were at that I mentioned it. I don't remember if it was during this call. I think it was before this. We talked about conventions as well. And we went to IC3 up in Connecticut. And one of the people I met there, I think it was Peter. I'm pretty sure there's 4 names in here. I'm pretty sure it was Peter. But here's a comic. And throughout the comic, they have these little QR codes. And if you scan them, they'll play an audio file. And so this was actually written. You can see it. It's a musical. So this is a musical in comic book format that you can then look at the pages, scan the QR code, and then hear the music that's playing during the scene. So it's just a way to like basically take the IP of comics and expand it into other mediums without actually having to create a whole other medium. So that's what I'm looking at.
It's sketchy at best, and from someone who has a business, an LLC, like I'm not willing to give anybody rights to anything. And as far as I understand, I mean, I might get a little bit of slack for this, but Adobe has tried, at least reading through a lot of their privacy policies and their stance on AI. Like
you talking about Firefly?
Well, within Firefly and anyone that also uses Adobe stock that submits photos, like there is an agreement that Adobe is, at least on the surface, is trying to be responsible. But again, like what are those creators receiving? Right? What are those photographers or artists?
Yeah, there's a huge thing now they're trying to push for that, because basically, it's like some of them are getting trained on like Getty images, and it's like, whoops, like that whole business could go under if that's the case. And then how do you compensate everybody? Yeah,
and it's you hear like horror stories of what musicians get paid from Spotify. I mean, as far as I heard, Apple does pay the most.
Yeah,
Apple, I mean, you're talking like 0.1% of a penny.
Yeah, it's like 13/10 of a penny. So it's like if you have 1 penny, move the decimal over, and it's like 1/3. So it's like like or 1300. Sorry, 1300ths of a penny. Yeah.
If someone wants to pay me 7 figures, they can have my IP and do whatever the hell they want, because then I can retire.
Yeah, that's what they did with James Earl Jones. They just bought his voice, and they're like, great.
Well, he was already rich. He didn't need any more money. He's good. I'm talking about a poor man that has IPs that, I've never had that offer, but I absolutely would be interested in doing like other media.
It's super funny too? Remember the whole NFT craze where everyone was going nuts about that? People actually ended up accidentally destroying the thing that would have protected them in the AI world. So with NFTs, that people misconstrue so much about what NFTs really are, because some of them are like, oh, I bought a piece of art and I guess it's mine. Yeah, except that if you did that and kept it and then let an AI use it, and then it can track it because it's all built on this blockchain, we could have solved this problem before AI came out, but basically it exploded, had a boom, and then crashed, and nobody knew what to do with it. And the few people who did, made off very well, because what they did was, instead of tying it just to their artwork, they tied it to like a utility. So like Gary Vaynerchuk, big marketing guy, he attached his to a live event that would happen at least 4 times. And then certain tickets came with like free merchandise, free meeting with him, free coffee, whatever it was. And so you got his piece of artwork. But the thing that other people that learned about this didn't realize, he was actually building IP. He now has an entire Pokemon level collection of characters and has an animated cartoon that it's released like every week on YouTube, where he has all of his V friends joined together. So it's actually interesting because some people hopped on hardcore with NFTs. Some people are like, screw NFTs, but nobody thought about like, oh, wow, like AI came into place. How do I protect my art? It's like, it already exists. We did it like 2 years before. Like it was there. We just stopped doing it. And if that's something where I think that if somebody introduces a way to protect the art through NFTs and allow any AI to absorb it, the difference is now it's kind of like when you write a song. It's like, technically you could go, I wrote 2 words of the 100 words of the song. So I get 2% of the written position, which is 50%. So I get 1% of the whole song. So the idea is that there's a way to potentially track that stuff that nobody is going into, because first off, the only reason that'll get enforced if it's in law. But the people who are making laws are so old, they have no idea. Like they barely know how the internet works. I remember watching, what was his name? Mark Zuckerberg get questioned by the Senate. And they're like, so like if I go to Google and I say, bro, he owns Facebook. He didn't make Google. Like you literally don't know what you're asking right now. So yeah, it's super interesting. Like where it can go, where it could have gone, where hopefully it ends up. But yeah, I agree. It's a little scary putting that stuff in there and hoping. In fact, the most recent thing I saw was somebody showed me a prompt that you can make a Lego version of yourself, but it didn't have to like fake and say like blocks that you can build and put together. Like it literally said the brand Lego in the prompt, and I'm like, that works now. Like they're like, we don't care anymore. Yeah. They're just.
That's where it goes down the rabbit hole of who owns what.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I try to do the best I can. I don't do watermarks or anything like that, but I typically will make sure that I'm posting when I do social media stuff or anything. It's low enough res to where it's just not something that someone can use and print and make money off of.
You're not dropping SVG files down and being like, here's the exact shape of this.
No. And that's why, like, I'm also, I don't know, maybe call me paranoid, but I don't do a lot of the things on social media that are fun and hip and all that cool stuff. Because again, like, who owns that image? Who owns, those things? And for me as a creator, as an artist, you just have to protect yourself. And if you have to build a bubble around yourself, sometimes we do. And,
the one thing that sucks about it though, and this is where I would pull back against that a little bit. It's like, so first off, if you ever are curious, technically the photo itself is now basically public domain when you share it on social media, but the contents of the folder can't be used for monetization by somebody else. They can just be used, like, let's say on social media. So if I post a picture right now on social media and someone takes it and posts it on their profile, as long as they're not making money off of it, there's nothing wrong with it because it is a publicly available photo now.
How do you know they're not making money?
That's the tricky part. Yeah. And so that's the part where it's like, it's kind of hard to follow that part where, like, you were asking, like, who owns it? Like, IP law already is set. If you create something, the moment you create it, technically you own it. You don't even have to trademark it. You don't have to copyright it.
No, I know that, but I'm going even deeper. I'm saying, like, if I do, like,
how do you track it? Is more the
Lego. If I do a thing about myself as a Lego, or if I'm going to put in my artwork into a program that's going to animate it and make it, like,
who owns that?
Own that animation?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
you're going to have some people from Lego show up at your house and be like, we own you now.
I just picture, like, remember the tin soldiers from Santa? I just picture, like, Lego versions of that to your house.
It's even that kind of thing. Like, there's even, and that's why I don't use Adobe Cloud, is because those things sit on their servers. Like, I have opted out of everything. Yes. Do I use Adobe software? Sure. I use Apple software too, but I make sure that, like, I care about my privacy. I care about my IPs. I care about my, what I'm working on. So for me, I'm a little bit, I do what I can as an artist. I know a lot of us artists some of us go off the deep end, some of us not so much, but you're right. Like, go ahead, share what I post. I mean, I like free press. I find out you're making money, I'm going to issue a cease and desist. It's just that simple.
I think that's actually a great example. I think that somebody want $1 billion idea right now, it's like figure out how to not to make it so everyone can be just suing everybody, but basically make it easy to track your IP, and then make it easy for someone who creates IP to be able to send like cease and desist without having to hire an attorney. Because, for example, now you don't have to like trick ChatGPT into writing legal documents. You used to have to like tell it like don't worry, I'll talk to a lawyer. But now you can just be like, write me this contract, and it'll do it. And it's pretty damn good. They've already had it run through the bar exam, and it knows all the information on there. So it's like,
as a creator of the IP, as the copyright holder, you don't need a lawyer to issue a cease and desist.
Oh, I know, I understand. I'm saying, but like someone who doesn't know that's what they're going to think. I'm like,
well, that's why they're watching the podcast, so that we can educate them to say, hey,
we
don't need this.
We got a cease and desist on our podcast, actually.
Ironically.
No shit.
Yeah, like
episode like 5. It was or 12. It was very early on.
It was some podcast in like Africa or something, and they're like, oh well, there's already this person has the same name, SNC, but it's not.
Yeah, like we called it
not even the same content.
Yeah, we called it the SNC podcast for the SeerNova Comic Podcast. Yeah. And we had to change it to the SeerNova Podcast because somebody already owned SNC. Even though like we wrote it down as the full name, we just put the logo as SNC. They're like, can't do that. And we're like, it's not even different location, different topic. Like we don't technically need to change. But
yeah, I was gonna say like location doesn't matter, but if it's not in the same genre,
location can matter depending if it's like what you're going after. And I think that they were location dependent, meaning like what they discussed. It's been so long, I can't remember. They were discussing like local stuff, so like we literally weren't competitive.
If they weren't talking comics or anything related to it, then it doesn't matter.
But it kind of worked out because I kind of like the idea of like SeerNova Comics, SeerNova Podcast. In the future, we could have SeerNova Films, SeerNova Animations, things like that. Well, so like it kind of worked out.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point and idea you bring up, Dylan, is when I did Dark Space Studio, my wife and I were at Portland, Rose City, 2022, I think it was, 2021-ish. And I'm like, she's like, you really should just do your own thing. Like no shade to the guy that I was working with, but he was a writer. I did some independent work with him. He wrote some really, really good stories that I would love to publish down the road, time and money willing. But I did worked on like 3 or 4 different books with him, and we only did like a few issues, and then it just fizzled out as indie creators. No, that's kind of how it goes in the 2015s, 2010s. Long story short, we're like, okay, honey, I'm happy to do my own LLC. Like, what's the name going to be? As a designer or marketer, like, okay, we need to come up with something fun, clever. And she kind of was like, well, call it Dark Space. You have a dark sense of humor, and you're dry, and you love space, right? Like literal outer space. And I'm like, well, shit, that's a cool idea. And I left it as studio so that it could be anything. I could publish novels, comics, to get into music production, because it's just a house studio. There's nothing defining it, anything specific.
And so, I like that. Like that's something where either there's one of two ways. I like it where like, because I have a music business that like Upstate is like the keyword in the beginning, and that's like Upstate Studios, Upstate Publishing, right? So I like it either that way, where like Virgin Hotels, Virgin Mobile, so that method. And then I also like it where like, despite the fact that it was weird when they first changed it, I kind of like the name Meta for like Facebook, Instagram, all that. But the idea is like Meta is this base thing, and like that's a very blanket term. Like even Google has the Alphabet Company. It's like all of this stuff is just part of the Alphabet Company. And if anything gets too big for itself, then you can branch it off and make it some subsidiary later. And if not, it's just easy to self-contain them into one thing. So I do like the idea of having like studio is a great name for like, it can basically do whatever you want it to do.
Yeah, exactly. So
like we are slowly creating a horror imprint with a different name. So
nice.
Yeah, can't wait for that.
Horror's fun. I love the horror genre, which is why I really kind of wanted to write a horror book, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was basically why we were discussing it. Was we have the what's it called, the Chronicles of Horror.
Yeah,
him and I have bounced back and forth on at least 4 or 5 ideas over the years of horror comics that we just never made, because we're like, well, we got this whole other world we're building. And then we basically got asked, like you mentioned, like you want to publish some other people's comics, and it's like that's basically what happened to us. We had people asking us to publish their comics, and we're like, we're not really set up for that. And then it's like, okay, well, what if we did set up for that? So now we're like working on setting up for that. And then we're like, man, we should kind of do this for ourselves. Like we should make the other comics that we were thinking about. So it's something that, and not only that, the other cool thing with horror comics is you can do them black and white, which is cheaper to make and print. And like it fits the genre. Like it's perfect. So you're not diluting the genre by doing something that also makes it less expensive to make.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Like that's
with so many things, music, comics, whatever, art in general. Like it's one of those things, like it's always about time and money. Either you got to find the time to make something, or you got to have the money to pay other people because you don't have that time. So, and that's just for me, like, well, I like black and white. I think the artwork kind of speaks for itself. It's really good artwork, but yeah, you're right. I mean, you're not kind of like reinventing the wheel by doing something way outside the scope of what a horror book could be or should be or is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was just thinking too, like in the fact that like we were talking about it before the podcast, like how manga is like a huge, phenomenon. Like it has a ton of fandom, and like that's all black and white. So it's like you're also, even if you create different genres, you're not creating them like mangas. Even the visual medium can make it like appeal to that audience. So you're not you're not restricting your audience either.
Yeah.
Also, fun little random thing I was looking at earlier because I'm looking at making one. These right here. Have you ever seen this? Like a 1-page zine where it's like a single piece of paper folded up.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. We saw this at IC3, and I'm like, that is the greatest thing I've seen. And it just folds, collapses, and now it's a little book. And it's one piece of paper. I just wanted to bring that up because we were talking about marketing too right before the podcast. It's like I think that this would be this is like I want independent creators to realize that just like musicians, just like novelists, just like writers of books, just like comic books, it's still a business. And if you really want to be able to do it long term, the goal should be to get this into the to really promote and get this into the hands of people that want to buy it, make fans. Like that's a really big deal. And this right here, I think is the greatest friggin' thing because like even if you printed this from Staples, I think like the most expensive it is like $1.26 for a full side, both color printed. I think that's what it could be $2 now. I don't know what paper is expensive now, but the whole idea is you could get these printed relatively cheap to the point where you could spend $5 on or $5, $10, $20 a day on Facebook ads, or buy a bunch of these and hand them out to, if you make kid friendly or acceptable comics, hand these out to kids at a convention, and now you're getting little fans that you're just kind of putting out there. And it's like that's what we wanted to do for Mittens, because that's like our big thing is if we get people hooked on Mittens and then they get older and they find out we have a bunch of other comics, we're basically building fans for the future.
Yeah, it's tough. Getting eyes on your books is probably the biggest hurdle for indie creators. Like you mentioned, you could do social media ads till you're blue in the face. And sure, does that maybe there might be some ROI on that? You're talking maybe 1%, maybe 3% if you're lucky. Is it worth doing? Sure, it's worth doing. Maybe you do some A/B testing just to kind of figure out what the water's like out there. But it's breaking that kind of egg on getting enough eyes, getting those new fans, getting people that maybe didn't even know about it or were dipping their toes into, comics or that media, right? To sit there and say, okay, well, I like this, and now they're a fan, so they will buy whatever it is that you're producing. But yeah, I mean, distribution's a big thing too. Like I'll throw that in the ring of things to get out there. So it's like, how do you break that egg or that mold, right?
Yeah, even that one, because Greg and I have been trying to do this for a while as well. One of the things I'll say a couple of the things that I've been thinking about. The first one is basically getting into places that aren't comic book shops, libraries, schools, coffee shops, things like that. So getting into places where people find you, because first off, you put a little, where'd they put there? I think they put those on the inside, which that's the only bad thing they did. They should have put it on the back cover. QR code, right? You know what I mean? It goes to your website. They find out about it. Like, you know what a Dr. Squash soap is? Right? I've had a subscription for them for like 4 years now. I use them all the time, right? Now the thing is that if I was a massive consumer of comics as well, I would do the same thing. Like if people that get Netflix, that's literally what they're doing when they used to get the DVDs in the mail. It was the equivalent of getting soap in the mail, right? Like you're just getting a different product that you want all the time. So I think that you can basically, with technology, computers, internet, et cetera, you can kind of bypass a lot of the distribution problems. I think that the main problem is obscurity. I think that everyone thinks that they're going to build their baseball field and the angels in the outfield are going to show up. And it's like, that's just not how that works. Like there are so many creators now because anyone can learn to create. You can go to Google and figure out how to create. Like you could be the worst drawer in the world. 6 months later, you could draw like a Marvel Elite if you went insane with like courses and programs and all this stuff. Like,
no, I will respectfully disagree.
You can say no. I have personally witnessed it happen. I've watched people who can't draw.
I'm sure they were already talented before they took that. They were not drawing stick figures.
So there's a great book called what's it called? Mindset by Carol Dweck. And it's literally the idea that if you believe that that's not possible, you are correct. If you believe that it is possible,
that I'm a millionaire, it won't make me one. I can bust my ass, but it won't happen until I do the things that I need to do. And I only say this because I don't want to say necessarily 100% because I went to art school, but you're not going to be a great, director if you don't cut your teeth at doing really shitty films. You're not going to be a great or a very good artist. And I would even argue that there's a lot of Marvel artists that aren't that good. It's a house style.
I didn't say the number one artist in Marvel.
No. Even the big three. I'd even throw Image into the thing. And might sound a little bit elitist here, and I can say for me, I'll be the first one to say my art is definitely not on par with a lot of those guys or artists in general. But it's the same thing that's being kind of shoved down everyone's throat. The styles look the same. The color palettes are the same. The storytelling is the same derivative storytelling they've been doing for the last 10 years. Where's the fresh, cool, fun ideas? It's indie comics.
Well, right? It's cool too. It's not even in the artwork of comics anyways too. It's in the stories. Like that really is
artwork. It's at least 50-50. I will argue all day.
I would say 80-20 stories. Like
close.
There's literally a Netflix deal that happened on a comic book that is politely garbage, but the story was so good they got a Netflix deal, proving that to be true objectively. It's one of those things
we can always pick out these like outliers. There's outliers by far.
No, but all of the Netflix deals are on great stories, not on great artwork. Like there's tons. I've seen incredible artists. They're not getting film adaptations because the story has to be good enough.
No one's saying the story is crap. I'm not saying you have to have a good story.
Yes, there's a what's it called? Minimum.
There's a balance. It's 50-50. If you have a really good story and really bad art, you are going to turn off a lot of the people that would actually come back and be your repeat buyers. That's the thing. Like a good story can only take you so far with bad art. But if you have good story and good art, you'll never stop. That's the difference. Or if you have really good art and a bad story, that good art's only going to take you so far.
Do you know what I see it as? I see it as a Muggsy Bogues, right? Like, you know what I'm talking about? 5'3" and can dunk. NBA player. Do you know what I'm talking about?
And he was one of hundreds of.
He's an
outlier. That's the point.
Agreed. So my point though is that like the craft of the game is what I would say the story, and your physical build is the art, right? Because
I could say it goes either way.
For example, Shaq was a really good player, but not one of the best. And Kobe Bryant, before he passed, actually mentioned that if Shaq ever tried half as hard as Kobe did, he would have been the greatest player ever because he had the art, he had the build to be one of the best, but he didn't have the story, the skills that he should have built out. Like he couldn't make a free throw. You know what I mean? It's
how many championships does Shaq have? My point. See, we're saying the same things. It's the same coin with different sides, and that's the thing. Exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of the difference between a Michael Jordan legend and Shaq is not necessarily famous only for basketball. He's famous for all the other stuff now. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, he has a life after basketball.
But I'm saying his legacy, like Michael Jordan, if he disappeared, we would all always remember him as the greatest basketball player kind of thing. Whereas Shaq, it's like a really good basketball player that does all these other cool stuff.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but as a fan, I mean, back in the day, we're talking like athletes that I'm familiar with because I don't watch basketball or baseball too much now. But in the 90s, 2000s, Shaq is still one of the greatest players ever. He might even be top 15, top 20. Yeah, I would argue Jordan's the best.
I'd put him up in maybe a top 20. Yeah.
But Jordan also did Nike Air. He also had a life after basketball, which is all Shaq is doing. So I can't fault them for getting famous, I'm not saying doing commercials. He's still a phenomenal ball player.
Yeah, but I would say that Jordan is more known for basketball than – I just realized we're on like a comic podcast and we're like talking sports over here. There's like people zoning out right now going like, what's a basketball?
The point, there's always going to be outliers where good writing will trump bad artwork. And there will be outliers where good artwork trumps bad writing. But if you have that imbalance, if your story is way like leaps and bounds better than your artwork, that's only going to take you so far, and vice versa. If your artwork is so much better than the story, that's only going to go so far. That's why you got to have good story with good art. And you're right, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, however that balance is, I could say in Luke, like I'd like to think my stories are pretty well written. I won't know until like people read them and say, no, that's garbage, or there's all these plot holes. But I think as I'm writing, the more I write, obviously, the better we get, and as an artist, the more you draw, the better you get. I'm sure that people can go from 0 to hero in 6 months as an artist. But again, that's the outlier and that's not the norm. And
I think it's an outlier due to like the level of commitment to something like that. Because like it is something where like if you were going to get that good in 6 months, like that has to basically be your 9 to 5. There's the whole 10,000 hour rule of like how to become an expert in anything. You need to commit that amount of time. The problem is most people don't have 24 of their 24 hours a day to commit to something to basically speed that up. So like someone who has a 9 to 5 and like also has night school or does any other extracurricular activities and then wants to become an expert artist, they're not going to do it in 6 months because they just physically don't have the capacity to put that much work into it, make that many mistakes, make that, because that really is. It's like learn something, do it till you mess up. It's like, oh, I kind of figured it out, learn something else and do it again, but then just do that over and over and over and over and over again. And it's like the amount of time that you commit to it based on the amount of time that you have is probably the main variable that would determine whether or not you could do something like that in 6 months. Yeah.
And I think there's an inherent talent. Like, for me,
I think talent can speed it up. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, talent is if you have that,
the X factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
you have
it could be, you can draw the arm like Jim Lee said. I can draw this quickly now because I've drawn the same arm 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Practice 1,000 kicks.
Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely people that have that kind of raw talent, but then there's also a lot of people that it takes them 10 years to get half as good as someone that could, that has that inherent talent. So it's definitely
that 10-year rule too actually lines up with the 10,000 hour rule. I forgot where it's all from like was it Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers book that this got like originated, where the idea that it takes most people 10 years because most people don't go through the quantity of deliberate practice is what it's called. Where you do something slightly harder than what you currently can do, but not so hard that you literally can't do it. And so it's like, but you have to do that to an extreme. So I think like in order to get 10,000 hours, it takes the average person 10 years, as long as they do it all like they do it every year, they're doing it consistently. But like the way to expedite that is, you have to be like committed. Like it's not an hour a day, it's 6 hours a day, like the Arnold Schwarzeneggers of the world, like that kind of thing, where he's like, I worked out 6 hours in the morning, 6 hours in the evening, I ate breakfast, and then I ate, and then I worked out. That's all I did. So it's like that type of person did it in 3 years, where most people it took 15. So it's like that's kind of the difference, where it's like things can get sped up, but it has to be like your entire life. And I think with indie comics, that's so hard because basically, unless you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you're not really going to have the time availability to commit, the amount of work that would need to be put in to make that much, that great of a leap so quick. And even Greg and I experienced this where I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we saw this company that started the same time we did, and they're blowing up. And we're like, how did they do that? We're so confused. And the very next year, they were bankrupt. And we're like, oh, they had venture capital money. I was like, that's why I didn't register like that. I'm like, I should have realized it. I'm like, how are these guys everywhere? Oh, yeah.
They were terrible at managing the business side of it. That if you have venture capital money, you're spending in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Maybe you're blowing up. I mean, there's a lot of indie creators we're probably friends with all ranges, right? They produce all kinds of books. And some of them have seen more success than others in the last 3 years, you know? And it's understanding where your fan base is, understanding, you know, who your fan base is,
and developing that fan base. Like not just
exactly. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, it takes years, as you know. Like, you know, Mittens was pretty good the first issue, but then second issue seemed to do better than the first issue, right? So it's just issue after issue after issue, and that's what I'm hoping for with a lot of the world building that I'm doing with the 3 characters that I got working on, and then, you know, bringing it all back. I kind of set the foundation. Like, here is the world of the 3 main characters that live in this Icepick world. And once these, you know, stories are told, then we're going back to the core, and we're just going to like full speed ahead. You know, hopefully maybe next year might be able to like re-release some of all the stories in a monthly format with new stories kind of happening after that. And you just see where that goes, you know?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love the world building. That's like a big thing that Greg and I spent too much. Like the other day, all I needed, we realized that one of our characters had to know a martial arts, and then I realized, oh yeah, we can't really use like our martial arts because they're all based on our cultures and countries, and we don't have those countries. We have the cultures, but we made totally different countries. So I'm like, we can't just name them that because they have a meaning that's directly related to something. So I literally spent like 5 hours researching like the top 20 martial arts used in MMA fighting, like the most, you know, common ones. Mm-hmm. And then I think I got to like maybe 12 of them. And I basically looked up the history of how they were named and then figured out how I could rename them using that same context. So like a simple one was Russia has Sistema, which literally means the system. And I'm like, okay, well, we don't want to use that. Let's use something similar. So we came up with, I think it was like Bojovka, which means like to fight or brawling or something like that. And then our what is it called? Jeet Kune Do. So like our main martial arts, because that's kind of like the initiation of MMA. It was Bruce Lee started it. So I'm like, okay, what's his philosophy? And it's like the water, like, you know, be like water. That's part of it. And so we're like, oh, formless way. And so it was like Wa Zhongding or something like that. I forgot the name of it off the top of my head, but it was like a name that like meant something like symbolic to it, but now we could claim it for our world. And it's like, damn, I realized after like a couple hours of that, I'm like, man, I think I was supposed to do something today.
So we can call you George Lucas for creating your own language to put in your stories, right?
We literally have our own language. We created the Noctum Realms language, where I created an entire font in it. Like I can type with the font now. I have it like in my Adobe, so I can type it, and then like, you know, what's it called? Perspective it, right? There you go. And so I actually wrote out an entire story for our Noctum Realm universe, and then placed it onto the books in our comics when we showed like a flashback to these ancient books. And so I wrote the story in the ancient language and then laid it onto the books. It was awesome. So like I show people that too. I'm like, there's a what's it called with like the letters match? What was it called? I have Rolodex in my head. Something Dex. What's the? Damn, what the hell is it called?
Oh, Codex.
Codex, thank you. Codex. Yeah, Codex. Yeah, it's like a simple word. I just couldn't remember it. But yeah, we have a codex in the back that shows that language and just matched with our letters. We were going to go crazy and make it like that, but then it spells it in Latin, and then you got to translate it again. We're like, that's going to confuse the crap out of people. Let's just put it in English, but just make different characters. And so that's what we did, which was fun.
Yeah, so I'll just stick with English. I'll just stick with English for right now. I'm not going to be creating languages.
It was great. I actually hand drew every character first, and then what I did was I was looking at like
I did it on a piece of paper, and then I took a picture of that piece of paper, and then
I vectorized it, and then put it into Illustrator. Yeah, that was nuts. But I remember looking into like, was it Korean, Japanese, like all of the symbolic arts, and then basically kind of took the sounds from them. So like they have like ka, ra, na, la, like they're all syllables. They don't have like standard consonants or consonants. Yeah. And so I took those and kind of matched them up. Yeah. Again, way too much on this, but like the cool thing is I do think that that's the type of stuff, like you mentioned, the world building, that when somebody becomes like a true fan and finds that stuff out, they love that stuff. Like, because I know I do. I love finding out this little hidden secret inside of a story I like, and then I want to make sure like anybody I know who likes that also now knows this. So I that's why we love building that.
Yeah, we actually like get some people at conventions like hooked because of that. So he's like, oh, and he turns to that page and Ink 2, and then they're like, what? If it's at Saratoga Comic Con, it's super easy. All I have to do is say, my tattoo artist that's
down the street
away.
Yeah.
And this is the convention center that the first page is on. Yeah.
What? But yeah. So yeah, we go deep into that. But yeah. So people should back your Kickstarter. And before you go, where can people find you?
Anywhere that you are online. Yeah.
Your Kickstarter is live, right?
Yeah. It's Luke Bloody Tooth. They can search that. Super simple. It's the only one that shows up. And I'm pretty much, if you search my name, Icepick. Icepick's been around for the longest, so that comes up pretty quick. I'm Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok. I'm even on like some of the weirder ones, Kara, Mastodon, like all that good stuff under my name. So yeah. I'm not on Blue Sky yet, but whatever.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where I don't know if that's gonna last or not, or if it's just another
or Threads
compared to
same with Threads. Threads is one of those ones where like it exploded and then like completely dissipated, and it's like the same 10 people on there. I've noticed it's like, or it's just rehashed from Instagram, so it's like I don't need to watch that. But I wanted to show your page real quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You can share your post from Instagram onto Threads, so yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just that's what I'm saying. It's just like rehashed.
That's what I do.
So. No,
there you go. Boom.
I do what I can. Yeah. And the video is like the video is like this slow burn horror trailer.
I don't know if my audio does it come through.
No, it's all good.
That's fine. They can get a quick glimpse when they go watch it themselves. Nice. This is going to be some like combination of like the night, like what's it called? Angel Buffy, Supernatural, like that vibe at the beginning.
Yeah, it's fun. I do all the videos myself. I don't do anything as crazy as you guys did for Mittens, because that one was pretty sweet.
Yeah, Josh does those, right?
Yeah.
He's gonna do a full like animation thing for the trade, because the second one we just had like it's almost like a video game like character selection screen almost, like, or like intro to that. It's just like it shows the characters, but I'm like, you don't have enough time for like an actual video. It's like, nah, but for the trade we're gonna do that, which is next year.
Yeah, no, animation, when you hire like a studio or professional, if you know somebody, you can always get a good deal. But
I understand why animation costs so much.
So expensive. It's so expensive.
Actually, when I made the font, like it's the same thing, because it's just like you have to build out a font. I remember getting priced at like a few thousand, and I'm like, I'll try it. I'll do it myself. And then I got done with it, and I'm like, I told them, I apologized. I'm like, I should have just paid you, because that was awful. I was like that. I like, now that I have completed it, I absolutely would have paid to know that I didn't have to do this. It was rough.
Yeah, because when I was doing Blender, it took me 2 hours to make an animation that was a plate, a bun, the hot dog drops into the bun, ketchup. That's 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Took me 2 hours. I was like, I hate that.
Yeah.
And then I forget how to do Blender, and then I would just redo the donut tutorial on YouTube, and I'm like, oh my god. And then he's like, wow, that looks like a really good donut. I'm like, yeah, it's like a Simpsons donut.
It's like, yeah, it took me 3 days.
It was a few years ago. I was playing around in Unreal Engine 4, and like it's just I did on my tutorial. The video was like 45 minutes long or something. It took me like
6 hours to watch it.
Yeah. 5-6 hours to go through it because I had no idea. But I'm like, no, Unreal Engine, like I could build 3D stuff and like throw it in the comic, have backgrounds or just whatever, bring it into Photoshop and change, whatever. No, not even going there,
Yeah. So there's that guy that was on our platform, Nick Thompson, and he he made a video game for his comic Don't Eat Meat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know.
I had it somewhere. I was trying to look for it, but he said to me, he's like, yeah, if you want like a game, I'll make it for like mittens. I was like, yo. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know Nick made that. I thought he like just had someone make the game for him, and I'm curious to see what it looks like. If it's like an 8-bit brawler, I'd be like, yeah, dude, how much?
It's like Pokemon, but like Pokemon.
Oh,
like it's a Game Boy game, and I don't know where I need to get a Game Boy again, but like, I'm like, where did it go?
You just got like one of those little emulator things you can plug into your computer.
Actually, I could technically play it on my phone. He's like, yeah, you could like put it to your phone, and then I was like, what?
Oh, it's got like
a chip.
NFC.
Yeah, NFC. Yeah. No, I ended up doing like a RetroPie, so I got like a few hundred, all the old school games up to like around 2000 with like PlayStation 2.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I got a friend who's got that. It's awesome.
All the 80s, 90s games. It's a lot of fun. So I have all those old school brawler games that I was talking about. So that'd be a lot of fun to do. Like I did do some animation in college. It was all like Mega Man. It was like all the sprite animation, and then he went down like a tunnel when Mega Man jumps down tunnels, and then it became like hand-drawn animation.
That's cool.
And like me and my buddy were doing some hand-drawn animation on stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've done the 8-bit movement, or so 16-bit. What was it 16-bit? Was that like Mega Man?
Well, it was 8. First was 8, then 16, then 32. They kept up in the res.
Yeah, I think it was 16 is the one I did. I did like a little bit of animation with that, and by little bit I mean like maybe 30 full seconds worth of like it was. I was like, yes, and that's all I'll ever need to do with that to know I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I'm getting back into like playing video games, so I'm playing the second Spider-Man game.
And you're streaming every day on Twitch now, right? How do I set it
up? But there's literally a lab for Connors, Dr. Connors, and it looks just like from the Seer Chronicles.
Oh, really?
Like, you go down to his staircase, like into his basement, and like this looks just like our comic book. I was like, what? So I took a picture. I was like, this looks exactly like our like that one scene. It's very weird. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Simpsons. Cool. Yeah. Nice. Wait, one last thing too, because we always ask we ask where people can find you, but the one thing I like to keep asking is, like, let's say you got a fan who specifically wants to communicate with you. What's the best place that you like to respond to people? Like Instagram, Facebook? Like, what's the place that if somebody like DMs you and he's like, oh, I really like this thing. What about this? You know, where
they can always yell, like Rocky, but I'm pretty quick to respond, either Facebook, Instagram. I say I'm not on Twitter a ton. It's more just entertaining myself on TikTok than doing important stuff. But even in any of the other social X or Kara, Mastodon, anything that I post, I typically will see notifications, and I don't blow people off typically. We had Nick Capone who did Purity. He just kind of randomly reached out and wanted to do like a collab stuff. So I'm working on some stuff with him. But yeah. So I mean, anyone can reach out, and I'm pretty quick to respond. So
sweet, cool, awesome.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.